welcome to episode number 3 of the Count Out Podcast. I am your host, Jason Shuffletowski, along with my co-host, Justin Williams. Justin, how are you this fine Wednesday evening?
Oh, I am wonderful, wonderful. Yourself?
I'm not doing too bad, really. Been a pretty busy week, I guess, as far as the world of wrestling is concerned. A lot of big news, a lot of changes, and just a lot of stuff going on. So we'll go ahead and jump into it here in a second. But first, just to kind of pimp ourselves out a little bit here, we now are on iTunes. You can check us out in the iTunes store if you search for the Count Out Podcast. We also are on YouTube. Search for us at the Count Out Podcast. Twitter at Count Out Podcast, and we are also on Facebook as the Count Out Podcast. So all that wonderful social media mumbo jumbo, we are on all of it. What's going to happen is your iTunes episodes, or your iTunes is going to be the first place you want to look for new episodes of the Count Out Podcast. Once, we're kind of running into some space issues at some point, you will have all the archived editions of the Count Out Podcast available to you on YouTube. So go ahead and check that out. Once again, we tape Wednesday nights and new episodes every Friday. So let's go ahead, Justin. Let's just jump into the week that was in professional wrestling. I know we've been kind of talking quite a bit about the Money in the Bank match.
Yes,
and we had our last two qualifiers, John Cena and Roman Reigns.
John Cena, no surprise there at all, which we talked about last week.
We had talked about last week that he was going to be in it, and we had talked a little bit about why maybe some of the members of the Shield weren't in it, so it was kind of interesting to see Roman Reigns get in.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that Reigns got in, but with the addition of the secondary Money in the Bank match...
Oops, spoiler alert.
Oop, my bad, guys.
No, like Justin is referring to on Friday's episode of SmackDown, which is be about the time you guys probably get to listen to this anyway.
Correct.
There was announced that there'd be a second Money in the Bank match, and the first participant announced was Seth Rollins.
Correct. So Seth came out and stated that there was going to be a second one, so I would not be surprised if we saw Dean Ambrose in that at that point to kind of round out the whole Shield thing.
So yeah, that goes ahead and that gives us for the World Heavyweight Championship Cena, Reigns, Cesaro, Orton, Wyatt, Sheamus, and Del Rio. Like I said last week, I do think the lineup is a little on the weak side, but I think the addition of Cena and Reigns really kind of helped solidify.
You needed those top-tier faces, and that's
you
what
definitely
it was.
did. We'll get into next week on our predictions and who we think is going to win that with the pay-per-view next weekend. But looking at it now with Cena and Reigns in it, I know I had said that it might be Orton or Del Rio. I'm a little curious what they do here. They really could go any way. They could go, Reigns. Seems like there was a time there where he was going to be the face of the Shield that broke out. You have Orton, who logically it would make sense that he wins the world title based on the Authority storyline and the way that he lost it. Wyatt, like I said, in my opinion, I don't think he's ready for it. Will he be ready down the line? Definitely, yes. I think he deserves a world title reign. I just don't think that time is now. Del Rio, to me, I didn't like his previous title reigns at all. I don't see what he adds to the company. There is talk of him leaving when his contract expires, which is shortly anyways. So I can't see him getting a lengthy run unless it's dangling the carrot in front of him to get him to stay.
Yeah, he's pretty blah anyway. I mean, there's been no character evolution from him for a very long time, so I can't see it happening.
And I think when he had the mouthpiece of Ricardo Rodriguez, I think that added a little bit more heat to it. It made the character a little bit more interesting.
Well, yeah, the manager itself, Ricardo, was great at getting heat.
Right.
So it kind of pushed Del Rio's character over a little bit more, and I liked that. Now without him, he's just kind of, he's there to kind of fill the Hispanic contingent, I guess, in the show.
Yeah, with Sin Cara being fired and Rey Mysterio hurt all the time, I guess, it does fulfill kind of the Hispanic, the fans. The WWE does have a huge Hispanic following.
Yeah.
They are huge
in
Mexico.
Great Hispanic fans.
So I mean, there is a large pedigree of Hispanic wrestlers. Tito Santana,
of course.
And Del Rio, obviously. So I guess I could see it, but I just don't see him being a world champion. And then you have Cesaro. I think he is going to be a world title holder in the future.
Yeah, I don't really like what they're doing with him now. Spoilers again, guys. Sorry. But they're kind of getting him away from the European uppercuts, is what I read a little bit earlier. which I think is a huge mistake, but they're looking probably at the concussion aspect of it, which he's not hitting him really hard enough to jar the head back enough to kind of cause a concussion. The only one that I could see is if the push-off uppercut that he does lands wrong. We were kind of talking about it earlier. It's almost like taking a diamond cutter or something.
Yeah,
just for a bump.
his uppercut that he does there, it's like a diamond cutter or whatever it is Orton does. I don't even remember offhand. What is it called?
RKO.
The RKO. I mean, it really is just a modification of that. And I don't think has anybody been on record getting a concussion from Del Rio with his, or excuse me, from Cesaro with his uppercuts.
No. And he's been doing them for years. Ever since he got into the business, he's been doing those. Just because he's been Swiss, he's European and he's in America.
For whatever reason, it seems like creative is trying to take away some of Cesaro's character development. I don't think it's good, but
I think it kills the character, to be honest with you. I think he needs to be that guy that's just killing everybody.
Well, you get used to seeing him doing that moveset, quote unquote, his high spots.
Yeah.
And you take it away. I mean, he's not a wrestler that's in developmental anymore. He's on the main roster. He's being pushed, I guess, as a heel, but he more or less comes off as a face. Why would you go and change that formula? Why fix why try to fix what's already working?
Like we've talked about earlier in the prior two podcasts, though, with him, is that you're going to see a Brock Lesnar feud eventually happen. Mm-hmm. So he's going to be turning face against Heyman at some point, is my prediction anyway. Which would make sense, because he clearly is not a heel.
No.
He'd be a good heel if he was allowed to go off and branch off on his own.
Right.
But he's not doing that, and he's letting creative do their work.
No, and I think, Heyman, previously being a heel, I don't think he's a heel now. I think the fans respect Heyman too much, where he comes off as a face. He cuts a hell of a heel promo, though, especially when he always talks about Lesnar beating the streak. I do like that. But, I mean, if you were going to put Cesaro with somebody heel, why don't you, he when he broke in to the E on the main roster, Oksana, who we will get to later, was managing him and was kind of his mouthpiece.
He should have stuck with Coulter is what he should have done.
He could have did that, or they could have put him with Rusev and Lana, perhaps, some kind of foreign connection thing.
Yeah.
I know I talked a couple weeks ago or last week that I don't think the foreign wrestler works anymore. We're not in that patriotic USA thing.
Not really anymore.
But I think something like that could, in theory, for heat, work for Cesaro. I don't see the pairing with Heyman. I understand why it is a good choice for a Heyman guy.
Yeah.
But I don't understand what this actually does for Cesaro's career.
Well, Heyman hasn't done really anything. I mean, Brock Lesnar is just a once in a while guy. And he doesn't talk.
Right.
So it makes sense to have a mouthpiece like Paul Heyman there, because, face it, at this point, he's probably the best promo guy that the WWE has.
Oh, definitely.
So you want to have him on a guy that's just that brutal where the talk can back it up.
Right.
But, I mean, even with Punk, they both could talk, so it made sense because they fed off of each other. But Cesaro isn't talking, and he's not that great of a promo guy. He's just not as intimidating as Brock Lesnar to come off, and Heyman really doesn't seem to be trying to get him over.
It's not really adding much to him, and I know there is the language barrier, the accent kind of thing with Cesaro. I guess that maybe creative doesn't feel he's capable enough of cutting a good promo, but still, I mean, there's no heat factor there for Cesaro. If you're trying to make him a heel, put him with somebody like Alana or an Oksana or somebody like that to kind of draw that heel heat.
Yeah, and I still prefer him with Zeb Coulter because him and Zeb, They fed off of each other. I don't see that with Paul Heyman.
No, and two, Zeb or Dutch Mantel is one of the best minds in the history of the business.
Oh yeah, wholeheartedly.
So I mean, he could have added so much had they just broke off Swagger. Like if Swagger went on his own and kept Coulter and Cesaro together, but
yeah, and to go back to kind of Dutch here too, if they would have let Dutch go off and do his own thing and kept creative out of the aspect of it, and Dutch, would have just been like, here's what we're going to do this week,
right.
I think they would have been perfectly fine. He would have got even more over.
But that's the McMahon complex. He doesn't, he has Heyman, who also has a good mind for the business. He had Bischoff, who some say doesn't have a great mind for the business, but he kicked McMahon's ass for the better part of 2 years.
He knew what sold, but...
And, I don't think McMahon probably feels like Coulter.
Well, he had Bill Watts for a while too.
He did, he did, and I just don't think that, they probably feel that Coulter is a creative genius. He is, in my opinion, but
both him and Heyman are.
Yeah, if you look at the Mid-South kind of territories, the USWA.
Jim Cornette's another guy, by the way.
Yeah, Jim Cornette too.
Forgot about Jim Cornette.
And if you even look at the early TNA and some of the some of the stuff that Dutch Mantel did there as far as booking, he did great work. And like I said, Heyman and ECW during its heyday before he got in over his head. Some of that stuff that they had was very innovative, revolutionary, so to speak.
Yep.
And then the last guy, Sheamus. U.S. champion. He is
the Irish John Cena.
He is workout buddies with Triple H, so could there be a possibility of a title reign there? Maybe. I don't know. I need another week of TV, just to kind of see what's going to happen before I can make my predictions. Like I said, we'll go through the card next week, and hopefully I know there isn't too many confirmed matches yet, so hopefully by the time we tape next Wednesday there should be a decent card solidified so we can go through.
What are we up to? 3 now? 3 matches for the card?
I believe the 2 Money in the Bank matches.
Then the tag team title match with the Wyatts against the Usos was added as well. I think that's where we're kind of
I do believe that's
right now.
when I took a look here before we started tonight. I think that's all I've seen for matches. So so far, not a huge card, but then again, when you've got 2 Money in the Bank ladder matches, it is probably going to be a smaller undercard, so to speak.
I'm going to assume that we're going to get a Divas title match in there. I'm not sure with who.
Paige, obviously.
Paige, but I mean, who her opponent's going to be, because she's been dealing with Alicia Fox for a lot of weeks, but last week she wasn't dealing with Alicia Fox. She's dealing with one of the Funkadactyls. I want to say Naomi.
And we're going to touch on some of the Divas and Paige and some of the future wrestlers here a little bit later. So let's say then with this second Money in the Bank match, we know already that it's going to be a contract for a World Heavyweight title shot whenever you want to cash it in. Mm-hmm. So let's say that they also have 7 participants in this match. We know the one is Seth Rollins. Who do you think? I know you had said earlier that possibly Dean Ambrose.
Yep.
But who do you think would fill those other 6 spots?
Barrett. I'm pretty sure Wade Barrett's going to get a shot. Rusev. I'd like to see Rusev get a shot in there. Who else? So we got 3, so we need 3 more people?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It's getting thin now. We're getting into like Damian Sandow.
It is. You think maybe like somebody like The Miz or Dolph Ziggler or Damian Sandow?
I would assume Ziggler's probably going to be in there.
Maybe even RVD.
They could throw RVD a bone. I mean, he's good for the high spots, so let's kick him in that match.
I honestly think that even though the other Money in the Bank matches for the world title, I think the match for the briefcase for the contract is actually probably going to be more exciting, just on paper who they have to work with.
Yeah, and those guys are a lot more flexible. They're not the hugest guys in the company. Right. So you're going to be seeing a lot more, like I said before, high spots in that match. And a lot of those guys have something to prove, so they're going to be putting on a better show.
Yeah, I think you're going to see most likely Dean Ambrose, The Miz, because Miz does need to make a return. Yeah. You have Christian out there who has been gone for a while, and they usually seem to bring these guys back for this type of match. RVD, who I believe was brought back last year for last year's Money in the Bank when he made his return. And then you have Rollins. And, probably Rusev, maybe Big E. Maybe
I could see Big E and Rusev in there with those two kind of getting a feud going and them screwing each other out of the title the Money in the Bank contract.
Maybe even Kane from the Authority aspect. It would make sense. I
guess. I forgot about Kane for a second. Right, Kane would make total sense to be put in that match.
He would. It'd be interesting to see what they would do. Then if you had somebody like Rusev, Big E, and Kane, that's a lot of big guys in a match that really doesn't necessarily work well for a lot of bigger wrestlers. But like we had talked last week, Rusev does kind of seem to work like a little bit of a lighter guy. And Big E, though big, kind of seems to work a little bit on the lighter side too.
Kind of. Not as well as Rusev.
No, and they're not... as far as when they do work big, they're not working big like a Vader, so to speak.
But I mean, Vader was doing moonsaults and jumping off the top rope.
Yeah,
so.
that's true too. And Vader was, honestly, in my opinion, a hell of a lot better wrestler, but that's just me.
Yeah.
So that kind of sets the stage for the 2 Money in the Bank matches, and once again, we'll kind of get to our predictions here next week. In other news, there was multiple releases this week, and also reports that WWE wants to try to cut $20 million out of the budget this year, mostly stemming due to the fact that the WWE Network is causing a loss. Now, when we take a look at
not failing, mind you, the network.
Not failing, but it was a huge financial undertaking.
Kind of like, and I'll go a little bit financial here. Kind of like when Facebook opened up and they got their IPO set up. The initial reaction was that this was going to be huge. Initially it was, but then all of a sudden it tanked.
Right.
So that was the same thing that happened to the WWE because they kind of inflated their network numbers that they thought they were going to get. And mind you, the WWE, we don't have the network over in the UK yet.
Right. And I don't even think we even have it. I think it's just in Canada.
Well, I don't even think it's in Canada yet. I think it's just the US right now.
Right.
I might be wrong. So if anybody knows, let me know.
I'm not honestly, maybe I should have did some research ahead of time, but I'm honestly not sure. I think you're right. I think it's only in the US right now. I know they announced the UK, but not a set date.
Which, to be honest, what do they have, like 400,000?
Right.
Their weekly viewership is
I think they said
3.5 million.
They're at over 670,000 subscribers. They hope to hit
Which,
a million
if you
by the
think
end
about
of the year.
That number, you're looking at about 25% of viewership with around that number. 25. As soon as you hit a million, it's going to be that 30%.
Right.
So that's actually a fairly large number per month that's doing that. But they overpredicted themselves, so they're losing.
Well, I know when we talked for the launch of the network, we were very excited about it, and we're both obviously subscribers to it now. Mm-hmm. I think the 670,000 to me is a disappointment. I thought it would have had 1 million shortly out of the gate.
I did too. I thought it was going to be fairly high, especially with the fact that it's $10 a month for special events or pay-per-views, as they call them.
Yeah, I think they dropped the special events the tag now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's $10 a month. It's the only place to get pay-per-views now, unless you have a local cable provider like Cable One or Turner or Cox Cable or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of surprised the viewership is low as far as the network's concerned. Then again, when you only have 2 to 3 million people that are watching wrestling a week, a lot of those fans necessarily aren't going to be fans of the history of the business.
No.
They're the John Cena fans, the Rey Mysterio fans.
They're the guys that, at this point, it's family entertainment, so It's families watching it with their children. So they don't necessarily want to go back to like the Attitude Era where there's, everyone's cussing up a storm, which I love. I love seeing that stuff, but I grew up in that. So a lot of these people aren't, like you said earlier, they don't want to be like historians of the business. They don't want to see kind of what happened and how we got to where we are. They're just interested in what the product's putting out now.
Well, I think in a way, maybe too much too late for the E. Maybe they should have did this a while ago. Maybe.
I think they shouldn't have overinflated their numbers. I honestly don't know what they poured into the network for funds-wise.
Right.
Maybe they poured in way too much to get it working right.
Well, I can definitely see now after, I think, our 6-month subscription actually ends in August, right after SummerSlam. So I would say that we're going to see some increase in monthlies, for monthly fees, probably a jump from $9.99 maybe to $15 a month.
If it was even at $15, I don't even think I would subscribe at that point. I think that's way too high of a price point.
I think it is too. We'll see what they do. If they keep it at the $10 price point. I've been very happy with it. I haven't put a lot of time into it like I figured I was going to.
No, I haven't either. But
just with everything that's going on outside of wrestling, I guess in my personal life, but I just haven't had time to really put into it. I have watched every pay-per-view since WrestleMania on it.
Yeah, and that's the first time for me ever doing that. Growing up, my parents would never allow me to do that, so It's the first time that I could afford to watch a pay-per-view each month, and I'm thoroughly enjoying doing that.
Yeah, and I same here. I had to wait until I seen recaps in the magazines, or it came out on home video or VHS.
Yeah, VHS back in the day in the
for all you
store.
young kids who don't know what that is. So no, I guess to see why they wanted to cut all this money. And all the money that Vince McMahon has lost recently, I think it was upwards of 350, lost, 400 million.
Yeah, he's lost a large sum. He's not a billionaire anymore.
Right. But then again, I myself am not overly concerned with this. Wrestling is cyclical. It goes in cycles. You know, how many other times has the WWE cut a whole bunch of wrestlers?
Well,
cut funds?
We're at a point where it hit a lull, like in the late 2000s.
Right.
Like, as soon as, like, Edge left and all that, it kind of hit another lull again. Mm-hmm. And now we're going to be at another crescendo. I honestly, I quit watching wrestling in the mid-2000s. I couldn't watch the product anymore. It just wasn't fitting.
And then I think, too, now... And I don't like Mark Madden at all. I think he's a tool. I think the only reason he had a job in the business because he was somebody's friend in WCW. His announcing sucked. But I will give him credit. He did make a point here in a recent WrestleZone article. And he does kind of hammer it home in a lot of his articles. Yeah. There's more people not watching wrestling now than there are actually watching it.
Correct.
And Kevin Nash also made a comment in an RF video shoot interview that you had... 5 million people watching WWF, and you had 3 million watching WCW at the 2000-2001. Mm-hmm. You have 3 million people watching it now. Where are the rest of those millions of people? Where did they go? They didn't all die.
That was because of the PG era. You take out the Attitude, and you take out those 5 big stars that they had, and your market share is going down. So we have to... get to a point. I mean, they're slowly dropping the PG. I feel that the WWE right now is currently sitting at where it was in 1993, 1994.
Right.
Where it's coming out of the Doink the Clown era.
And going into the new generation era before the Attitude, yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to be seeing something within the next, 4 to 5 years, depending on how they do it. Because they're still going to want the PG. We're going to be seeing something special coming up here.
Right.
Soon.
Right. And then, when we look at the list of wrestlers that released, we have Drew McIntyre, Oksana, Kurt Hawkins, Teddy Long, Camacho, Brodus Clay, Evan Bourne, Yoshitatsu, JTG, and referee Mark Harris.
Jinder Mahal as well.
Jinder Mahal as well, correct. When I've read, some of the sites saying... it's creative, never did anything with these wrestlers. Honestly, when they tried to do some stuff with some of these wrestlers, like a JTG or an Oksana, I didn't really see anything out of them anyway. So no. I have been let go from previous jobs, so I know the feeling. It sucks. I would never wish it on anybody.
No.
Nor would I wish it on anyone in wrestling. But I don't think that when I look at this list of wrestlers, I guess McIntyre and Mahal, they were kind of in a lower card run. Yeah,
McIntyre was Vince McMahon's golden boy for
he was the chosen one.
That little run that he had for 3 months or whatever.
Right, when he was IC champ.
Yeah.
And Kurt Hawkins had when he's with Vicky Guerrero and Zack Ryder and Edge back in the day, La Familia or whatever, however you say it, I think it was called back then. And he had that run, and then he's just been kind of wallowing in mediocrity since. Evan Bourne, a hell of a talent, a really good wrestler.
Injury
prone,
bug.
And then when he comes back, he gets 2 wellness violations in a matter of months apart from each other.
Yep.
Shatters his foot in an accident. So I'm surprised they actually kept him for this long. And then you have Yoshitatsu. Has he done anything?
Yoshitatsu, though, to defend Yoshitatsu, they never gave him a Mr. Fuji-esque manager.
Right.
So that's okay. This is something that really, really, really bugs me about WWE. They will not give Japanese wrestlers of any type a chance. And I mean, we'll get into this a little bit later because we're going to be discussing Kenta. But they need to have somebody in the E that is like a Mr. Fuji at this point, so you can bring these supreme talents from Japan that have done everything in Japan over here to work.
Almost like
I hate to say
Sonny Ono was in WCW when they had a lot of the influx of Japanese wrestlers.
I hate to say it, TNA does a great job of this, and
there's a TNA reference for the week.
The only reason I mention that is because they did they do have a cross promotion going with Muto's new promotion that he's doing.
Right.
So they're having I forget his name, but they're having one guy do a lot of. He's currently the X Division champion,
Correct.
I believe. They're doing a lot of promos with him in Japanese, but they're doing like a lot of wording and stuff, closed captioning for him, so you know what's going on, so you feel what he's doing, and you're into his storyline. So it's one thing that they're doing really, really, really well at this point, and I wish they would do that in the WWE.
Sonata is actually
that's
the
what
X Division champion.
Yep.
Yeah. And
great wrestler, by the way. If
right.
anybody has a chance to watch him.
Muta's promotion, Wrestle One, Kasian, if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. My Japanese isn't what it used to be. But no, and I think TNA does do a good job there with foreign relations as well. But like I said, going back to this list here, Mark Harris was let go. There was some talk there that the referee.
Oh, okay.
he botched a couple of matches on live television. He did have kind of a Twitter rant outbreak kind of thing, so I could see why he got fired. Oksana, cute as hell, but
never did anything.
What really did she do? We're not, and I'd like to touch on this in a future episode. We're not in the era anymore of where there's valets or managers. So if you're not either wrestling or announcing, what really is there for you to do? They have all these.
Which is a shame, by the way.
It is a shame, and I think we'll get into that topic a little bit later in a future episode. Yeah. But you have these women that are like figureheads or general managers or backstage announcers. You can only do that for so much. You either got to really stand out, or you got to be able to wrestle, or there is really no spot for you on the roster in the WWE anymore.
Yeah, and I mean, especially for women, it's they don't push women that can actually work at all, and they don't allow them the time to cut a promo and get over with people like they used to do. I mean, look at Sable; she was cutting promos all the time.
Well, here we go with another TNA reference. I never should have said we're never going to talk about TNA, because ever since I said that, we seem to have
we've hit the two good things that they do.
Right, they do an excellent job with the Knockouts division.
Yes,
I mean they have a huge crop of talented female wrestlers, and that's one thing that they do well too, is they really seem to build the Knockouts division quite well.
They all can talk.
That's
amazing to me.
They can talk. They're beautiful women.
Yes.
And they can wrestle.
Yeah, every single one of them can wrestle a great match.
Right. I mean, when you look at some of the divas that the WWE has pushed kind of down our throats, and when you look at Caitlyn, couldn't cut a promo.
No.
Couldn't talk. Honestly, really couldn't wrestle.
No.
And if you look at someone who would be her counterpart in TNA, like an Angelina Love, cute as hell, like I said, can wrestle amazingly, and can cut a promo.
The Gail Kim's in TNA. Gail Kim is amazing. They should have never got rid of her.
The Velvet Skies, Mickie James, Brooke Tessmacher,
ODB,
Taryn Terrell, ODB. I mean, the list goes on, and they have. I guess you could almost say the Knockouts division is more exciting than anything else TNA is doing. But
if you watch TNA, that is
if you watch TNA. No, like I said, no one really stands out to this list. Teddy Long, that character was played out a long time ago.
Teddy Long should have became another referee again, but I think he's too old to do that.
He did the managing, he did the referee, he did the GM of SmackDown. Maybe he was just looking for something else to do. He'd been around the E for so long, I think maybe it was just something he just didn't want a part of it anymore. Maybe he had something else to do. I don't think
JR situation with them kind of forced retiring,
Well,
maybe?
I don't think it was something they forced retired him. I think maybe it was something where he just asked for
just to get out,
to get on. He'd been in wrestling forever.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when he managed Ron Simmons and Butch Reed in WCW. Doom was the tag team name.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that guy's been around forever, so I could see where he didn't want it, where he wanted out.
We weren't doing anything with him anyway at this point, so.
No, not really. So that's kind of going to segue us into our main topic this evening. We're going to do something a little different. I know the past 2 weeks we've kind of talked about greatest wrestlers of the 90s, and we talked a lot about our history with liking the business and just some of our synopsis of the history of the business. We're going to do something a little different tonight. We're just going to, I guess, BS about what we think some of the up-and-coming wrestlers of the future, what we think the future of wrestling has to offer, just to kind of show that we are, we're not just a couple of old fogies talking about the good old days. We do know, we do follow.
We do keep up.
We do keep up. Justin does keep up with the independents and everything like that. So let's start here. When we look at, your two major companies right now are WWE and TNA. Ring of Honor is having their first ever, well, they've had their pay-per-views and everything, but their first actual pay-per-view this Sunday. I believe it's called Best in the World. You have Global Force Wrestling, which is being started by Jeff Jarrett. I've seen a lot of videos, a lot of tweets. I haven't seen a lot of action on anything yet, anything about TV, wrestlers, anything like that.
I think they're, to kind of speak for Global Force, I think they're waiting for what happens to TNA on Spike. So
yeah, I think that Jarrett is waiting because I think Jarrett's got a hell of a connection with Spike because TNA is Jarrett's company.
Yeah, it was Jarrett.
It was Jarrett's company.
Yeah,
him and
Jerry
his dad's.
Jarrett.
So I think he's just kind of waiting it out. I know he's doing kind of like I don't want to say necessarily, maybe like a talent search. I know in a couple of his videos where he's been.
He's trying to get guys that are, like these recent releases, I wouldn't be surprised if some of those guys ended up on Global Force.
He did tweet that the independent talent pool got a lot bigger when all these cuts happened. And like I said, if we look at the list, someone like Evan Bourne would really, in my opinion, if he can keep his nose out of the drugs, rehab, not be hurt all the time, I think he's someone that can benefit the X division.
Yeah, I could see that in TNA. Another guy that I could see Jarrett picking up out of that crop that we were talking about, Brodus Clay.
Yeah.
He's great on the mic, actually. The other week on NXT, he actually knocked Aaron Neville's teeth out.
Right.
Like, legitimately knocked his teeth out. So he'd make a hell of a heel.
And Brodus Clay, I guess, I know I said that creative, it wasn't creative that had anything to do with it. He is one guy that I will see creative pissed away. Funkasaurus.
He actually created that. That was his doing.
I don't.
But they didn't push it to the point where it needed to be.
When he first debuted on the main roster, he debuted as a bodyguard for Alberto Del Rio. And big guy, a thug. I could believe that.
Yeah, it made sense. He was a bouncer in the previous life.
With me being a 31-year-old wrestling fan, I see him come out dancing with little kids and being a big guy like that. To me, it's a joke. I don't care if he created the character or not. To me, that's a joke. We're not... I know you said we're kind of getting into that new generation, kind of like we were in 92, 93, 94.
Well, you still have to pander to your main audience, which is children. So that's why that character was there. John Cena's not going to be around forever, so you need to get that guy that does the 50 bajillion Make-A-Wish wishes.
Right.
So there was a place for it.
Well, I could see where you're coming from there, that there was a place for it, but the longevity of it isn't there.
No.
If he thought that was something where Funkasaurus is going to be a world champion, get real. This isn't Doink the Clown or Duke the Dumpster Droese or anything like that. I mean, come on.
The Marauder.
Or Mantar with his gigantic bullhead that he couldn't get into the ring. No, and another guy that I look at that I think would benefit by hitting the independents again and maybe like a TNA, I think Drew McIntyre could really... He could be a top star in TNA.
If you give him the opportunity, he can speak a little bit. We didn't really see too much of his promo cutting ability. But he's got that size. I don't want to say he's like a Mark Jindrak.
No.
Or, the guy of that size. Or there's another guy that was in TNA for a while, Matt Morgan.
Right.
Who's that kind of size, and it was kind of being dominant, but he could never talk on the mic.
Yeah, and
I could see Jarrett picking him up.
McIntyre can cut a hell of a promo, and he can wrestle. I could see him in TNA or Global Force.
Mm-hmm.
TNA, has made some budget cuts recently as well, so I don't know what their plans are for adding wrestlers. They seem to do a lot of in-house stuff, or, like, who did they pick up from Ring of Honor recently? The Wolves?
Yeah, Davey Richards and Eddie Edwards.
Yeah, so I mean...
Steel, by the way. Well,
yeah,
Davey Richards is kind of a head case.
I think that's part of the reason they never got to the E. Because of the attitude.
Well, Eddie Edwards follows Davey Richards everywhere, so that's the reason why.
Right. And I mean, so there is a lot of wrestlers out there for Global Force to pick up. I'm curious to see what they're going to do for TV deal. Are they going to be a live TV? Are they going to be taped? I hate taped wrestling. I mean, I was used to it when I was a kid. I was used to it, but when we got to the internet age, you have to be live every week. They don't have to go toe-to-toe with WWE. No. I'd like to see him go toe-to-toe on Thursday nights with TNA. Knowing Jarrett, he might do it just to stick it to Dixie Carter.
Yeah, I could see that. I'm kind of interested to see if TBS or TNN picks him up, if Spike doesn't.
And I love my Turner networks on the WCW. Obviously Ted Turner really doesn't have much to do with TNT or TBS or CNN anymore. He hasn't for years. Still got money.
Well, on those channels, though, if you think about it, drawing a 1.7 is good.
Right.
I mean, no one's watching TBS or TNN every night for their TV shows.
Right.
So,
and I mean, if Global Force ends up on TNT, like Monday nights at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, like Nitro, I'm going to mark like a 5-year-old kid. But no,
I don't see that ever happening.
I'm sure they'll do taped because obviously it's cheaper. Unless they can get a soundstage somewhere where they can do it live. I'd love to see them do it live.
As long as they don't do the NXT style of taping,
right?
I don't want to see the same crowd in there 6 weeks in a row. That bothers me.
I don't want it to be like a TNA where you tape a whole month in advance because that's just ridiculous. I don't want to watch tape TV. I don't want to watch something I know that's already happened.
I didn't mind it when it was like Nitro when they were doing before they went live, where it was tape on like Tuesday or something like that.
That was Raw. Nitro was live every single week from the outset.
Yeah,
Raw would be taped one week and then live the next week.
Yeah, which I'm fine with that if they do it that way, just for the fact that you don't know. What's going on. It's not the same crowd for 6 weeks in a row, and
right.
It just makes more sense to me to do it that way. And it doesn't bother me that they do it that way.
No, and I think if it went toe to toe with TNA, that would cause TNA to step up their game too, because competition does seem in the wrestling business to bring out the best in everybody.
Yeah, and a guy like Jarrett too, if he's doing the booking, he's going to be bringing in other guys to work on it. I wouldn't be surprised if Jim Cornette got involved, even though Jim Cornette doesn't want to be involved in the wrestling business.
Right.
If Dutch
he was kind of outsed out of TNA and Ring of Honor pretty unceremoniously.
Yeah, and I don't see like a guy like Vince Russo working with Jarrett anymore. That I think they burned a lot of bridges there.
I agree. I could see Cornette working with Jarrett.
I think that'd be a wonderful combination.
Scott D'Amore from TNA, who was instrumental in helping get the Knockouts division to what it is today, he's working with Jarrett. I've seen him in a couple of videos where they're doing the talent search. Rumored that Mick Foley is going to have something to do with Global Force as well. He did appear in a couple of pictures on their Twitter.
Yep.
I could see Foley being a commissioner type role or announcer.
Well, Foley actually, I don't know, he could be. That'd be awesome, but I think he tweeted that he's going to be a comedian full time. But he will probably end up having some input with Jarrett since they're buddies.
It's like a lot of wrestlers say, wrestling's like a drug. Once it's in your system, you're never going to get it out.
Exactly.
I mean, so I could definitely see Foley being a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of other people out there, like we said, Cornette. Lots of different wrestlers out there that they can go after. I need to see some wrestlers signed. I need to see some TV booked. Or a pilot. I need to see something before I get my hopes up.
Yeah, I want him to kind of go old school and have one guy booking it, and that's it.
Right.
And I mean, you could have story by just a little group of people, But you can't have like the E has with, Hollywood writers coming in and doing all of that. You have to have guys that have...
Or a whole writing team of like 12 people, which I think is what they have.
Yeah, TNA does that, and no one can cut a promo, so it doesn't work. What you need to do is you need to tell a story in the ring.
You need Jim Cornette.
Yeah. You need a guy like that that's been around that's done that how many times?
Maybe even Jim Ross.
Ross would be really interesting.
Person we forget to mention. Could you have a Ross Cornette team up? I don't think that they have any heat with each other.
No. I don't think that they do either.
And
they've had a podcast together, and they're very cordial with each other, so I don't think so.
Jeff Jarrett, in my opinion, not necessarily as good as a wrestler as he thought he was. He is second generation. He did stick around for a long time. He does have an okay mind for the business, too. I think if you had something like a Jarrett Ross and Cornette kind of triangle of power, I think you really could come up with some good TV there if they had the right wrestlers.
Yeah, I think those three would be really great. And even if, Dutch stopped working with the E and
jump ship
down there, Dutch Mantel and Cornette have been working together for years.
Right, and they love working with each other because I know
they
used to go on the road together when they drove up from Louisville up to Orlando for TNA.
Yeah, and they used to do TNA booking all the time too. Both of them were working the creative side of it. And that was when TNA was good.
And I think I'm hoping Global Force takes off because that gives you as a wrestler different avenues. You could go to TNA. I don't really know why you'd want to.
No.
But you could go to Global Force. It might start things up a bit again. Like I said, I don't think we're going to see Monday Night War ever again in our lifetime.
No.
We could see where wrestling starts to get into the 3 or 4, maybe, ratings.
I think we're going to get into a territory type situation, but with 4 main territories. ROH, if you don't remember, is owned by Sinclair. Mm-hmm. Sinclair is a huge broadcasting company. Jim Ross has said it best. As soon as they get their lighting working so it doesn't look like a dinky house show, they're going to be great. But they need to have TV every week for a mass audience, not just the Sinclair stations that are showing up. I think there's like maybe 20 or 30 markets that Sinclair is in, and unfortunately they're not in our market right now. They are in the cities, though.
Right.
But ROH, I could see as soon as they get their lighting right, they put their money in... you're going to see, as soon as they expand markets as well, you're going to see them being another player.
Do you think that, this pay-per-view this weekend for Ring of Honor is make or break for them? All eyes are on them right now. Really, DirecTV, I think, is actually carrying it. And they're, they're not even carrying the E anymore. So, if it tanks, like a lot of their iPay-per-views, a lot of technical difficulties that they've had, which Cornette has alluded to himself in a lot of shoot interviews. If you get a chance to listen to any of them, he goes on some pretty good,
epic rants.
They're epic rants, but they're pretty much 99.9% the truth.
Yep.
Do you think it's make or break for Ring of Honor this weekend?
I don't think it is. Sinclair, like I said, is huge. It's not like ECW was, where they started doing pay-per-views and then the company, for the buy rates that they had, wouldn't pay them the buy rate, so they went out of business.
Right.
Paul Heyman has said multiple times, for TNA especially, where they've been under $6-7 million a year, or a month, and ECW was owed $7 million, and by the time that they were, it was $4 million, and by the time that they went bankrupt, they owed $7 million. So if they would have got that money, they would have stayed in business a lot longer than they would have. But I kind of digress on that. With ROH, the budget's there. And if this pay-per-view turns out to be well lit in a nice, where's the location of it? Do you know?
I think
is it Hammerstein?
No, it's. Let me confirm. I want to say it's in Maryland.
Okay.
I might be wrong on that.
We'll look at that quick.
We'll look that up. I'm honestly not sure. It looks like it's at Tennessee State Fairgrounds. It looks like.
Really? Okay, so it's
Nashville.
An outdoor show then, or is it indoor in the little area?
I really don't know. I'm guessing if it's in the fairgrounds out there, it's outside.
Which is good. I mean, that kind of brings us back to outdoor wrestling, like we kind of talked about last week too, or the week before. Excuse me, with the Von Erich
and when I look at the card, from some of the little bit I've followed Ring of Honor and some of the independent wrestling. It looks like a really stacked card.
Yeah.
TV title winner, and then a 6-man mayhem match where the winner gets a shot at the TV title. The World Heavyweight Championship match, Michael Elgin versus champion Adam Cole, should be an amazing,
great match.
Amazing match.
Hopefully Elgin gets it this time.
Right, and you have Matt Hardy and the prodigy Mike Bennett against the Briscoes. That should be an amazing match. I'm not a huge Matt Hardy fan, but I do like Mike Bennett quite a bit, and Maria Kanellis is also a cutie, so obviously.
Easy on the eyes.
You have Kevin Steen versus Silas Young.
That might be. Is that his last match?
You know, I wonder if it is.
I'm pretty sure it is.
I think when the reports came out that Steen signed with the E, that he was going to finish all his obligations. So
I think that's his last obligation. I might be wrong. It might be another month, but
so that's going to be an interesting match. Really a stat card, and really a 3-hour pay-per-view for only $24.95 is the list price of this. I mean, so it's more than half of the standard price of a WWE pay-per-view when you actually could order it on satellite.
Which is to be expected. I know Dragon Gate used to actually run pay-per-views at about the same rate.
Right, right. So we've talked about kind of TNA, Ring of Honor, Global Force. What do you think the future is for the WWE? Do you think Vince McMahon pulls the pin? I mean, they have a lot of, they have some financial woes, but the Performance Center, NXT, Triple H really pushing that. They have a lot of bright stars up and coming.
They have a lot of guys in NXT that are waiting for their shot.
Right. What do you think the future is for the E? Do you say the future is bleak? Are we going to be, let's say 5 years from now, are we still going to be at the 2 to 3 million fans watching Raw per week? Or are we going to be an increase or a decrease? Where are we going to be?
I kind of alluded to that earlier, though, too, is that we're in the PG era, but we're slowly going out of it. As soon as it hits 9 o'clock, they're starting to say, like, excuse my swearing, bitch.
A couple other
typical cuss words that we have. That wasn't happening back in 2006 or 7.
Well, that wasn't even happening a year ago, really.
No, it wasn't. And I think that's because of Triple H. And I think he realizes that, those words used sparingly show a lot of emotion. So we're kind of getting back into that. I don't want to say Attitude Era because that means you'd have to get a guy like, Stone Cold or someone to kind of jump that, or even like another NWO floating around somewhere. But I don't ever see that happening again.
Right, and as much as people piss on Triple H, I think he really does have a mind for the business. I mean, he really busted his rear end working his way up. He has ultimate respect for the business, obviously, with a lot of the Hall of Famers that he's brought in the past couple of years that haven't been inducted. Bruno Sammartino, Ultimate Warrior.
Both those guys were huge.
Yeah,
for the fact that they wanted nothing to do.
No, and I think without Triple H, they never would have gotten in.
No.
There's no way.
No.
So I mean, he's, pardon the pun, a student of the game, so to speak. He knows. I think there's some possibility for the future for the E to be bright. I hope the financial woes aren't a sign of a bigger issue. Which, like I said, wrestling is cyclical. It goes in cycles.
Maybe that might be the best thing for us, though, because reading articles, they were thinking about possibly ousting Vince McMahon from the chairmanship.
Right.
And having, a board of directors essentially run the company. I know that they were kicking out the current board of directors that are on there because of the stock problems.
Well, and like I said, it's not like they let anybody overly important go. No. I think it's a trimming of the fat thing.
Yeah.
You have that, and people look at, oh my God, they fired 11 people. That happens everywhere. Big corporations. It's an everyday deal. It's unfortunately.
It's just these guys are on television.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate, but it's life. It happens. You have big businesses that go through financial woes. They have to trim the fat.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, if Vince gets ousted and his hand is not in the cookie jar all the time, Triple H. If you have Triple H running day to day with Stephanie, I think both of those guys have a good grasp.
Right.
And I'd like to see Shane come back in, to be honest with you. I mean, he had a great grasp of what the business was.
I don't really remember why he left. I know he wanted to pursue other interests, but you have to wonder maybe if
He wanted to do his own thing.
I think he maybe wanted a little bit of control of the E2, and I don't think his old man was willing to give it up.
Not
it kind
yet.
of seemed like Triple H was the prodigal son anyway. So
Yeah.
So we kind of given, a brief outlook of what we think of, basically, I guess, the big four, if you want to call them. Really, it's the big one and the little three, really.
Yeah, exactly.
As far as wrestlers, who has your eye, who has your attention here for the future?
Kevin Steen is huge. Michael Elgin. If Michael Elgin can get some kind of shot with the E, I think he'd be great. Adam Cole's another guy too. Adam Cole has that swagger about him like CM Punk had.
Right.
And he can cut a hell of a promo.
Well, the one thing about the E is they do seem to sign some Ring of Honor talent into NXT, and they get them up to the quote-unquote WWE style.
Yep.
Obviously, if TNA cut a bunch of people tomorrow, WWE isn't going to sign a single one of them.
No, most likely not.
I mean, so Ring of Honor is almost like next light.
The only other person I could think of is Kurt Angle. If Kurt Angle got cut, maybe the E would re-sign him on a Legends type deal. That'd be about it. I don't think they're gonna put him on the road.
Or they can sit and milk it like the Sting thing too. But
well, the nice thing about Kurt Angle though, he has been sober for 11 months, so we got to give him that. So congratulations, Kurt Angle.
We got to give him that. He was actually. I won't reveal the location exactly where we are, just for safety reasons, but he did get arrested here, not far from where we live, on a DUI charge here not that long ago. Not that we're holding that against you, Kurt Angle. If you listen, props to you for cleaning up your life and getting your act
congratulations.
together.
That's a hell of an accomplishment. 11 months.
I guess some of the wrestlers that I'm looking at, the Von Erichs.
Ooh, there
debuted
it is.
at TNA Slammiversary this week, and I
Von Erich.
I really marked out for that. I think there's something there. I think TNA is a good spot for them to start. I don't think they're a team that would be quite ready for the E. I would have liked to have seen him on NXT with Kevin Von Erich managing. In my ideal situation, what I would like to see is the Von Erichs go to WWE.
Mm-hmm.
And you have Lacey Von Erich, who is the daughter of the late Kerry Von Erich, manage them.
Yep.
You've got the Von Erich dynasty, the third generations of the Von Erichs, only the three of them, really.
Yep.
That would be, to me, something. And you have a lack of tag teams in the WWE. The Von Erichs.
Does that pigeonhole the Von Erichs, though, to just being a tag team?
No, I don't think so. I think eventually, they could do the tag team.
Are they going to branch off like David and Kerry kind of did and won the NWA title?
They could break off on their own. And, I mean, that writes itself.
Yeah, it
Third
does.
generation, the Von Erichs. You have...
The Von Erichs are a household name in Texas.
You could have them win the tag team championships. The storyline is already there. I was disappointed.
I think they're a bit too green.
Yeah,
right now, and TNA grabbed them while they could because of the name.
What was disappointing to me is TNA had them win via a disqualification against the Bromans. Why don't you have the Von Erich? You bring the Von Erichs in, you parade them in. It's Father's Day. It's Kevin Von Erich's kids.
Yeah.
Why don't you give them a clean win? What does a disqualification do for the Von Erichs? A disqualification win. Win is a win, I guess.
Yeah, and the Bromans are supposed to be heels, right? So it makes sense.
It's Zema.
To me.
It's Zema Ion. I mean, I don't even know what he is.
Yeah, I don't either.
No, and then
another jobber.
Another tag team. I guess they should probably do some singles wrestlers too. I like the Ascension.
Yeah.
There has been talk that they're going to come up onto the main roster now.
Those guys should never not be a tag team. They tried it before when they were both,
Yeah, when they started kind of
work.
in the NXT kind of thing there, they were kind of like a group with Ricardo Rodriguez was in it. I think Raquel Diaz was in it.
Yep. And
they've worked well as a tag team. I would like to see them. They would work well with the Usos. But I really think the money feud there, you could have them feud with the Wyatts.
Anybody.
I would love to see an Ascension versus the Wyatts tag team.
I could see them, if they keep with it, I could see them becoming a Legion of Doom type.
Right.
Where they're always going to be a tag team and always remembered for a tag team. Even though you're going to get singles wrestling every now and again, but stick with your bread and butter. Stick with what you know what's good for
that's the thing with the E. They want to have a tag team division, but they don't want to keep anybody together. And when they have a tag team division, we've got the Usos. Yeah. We've got the Wyatts. What's left of the Shield?
Rhodes Brothers with Stardust.
Yeah. And then you have who am I thinking? The Masked. Carlito and Primo or whatever. Not Carlito, but...
Los Matadores?
Yeah, and that's your tag team division.
You also have people in...
Or Rybaxel, too, I guess.
Rybaxel, yeah. That. You have tag teams in NXT, too. I can't think of the guys' names. I'll come back with it.
Well, no, you have the Ascension that would add so much to the tag team division. I mean, like I said, the dark persona that they play, you could have a year. Well, obviously, we're not going to have a year worth of storyline in today's day and age, but you could have 3 months worth of storylines between them and the Wyatts.
Yeah, easily.
I mean, if Bray Wyatt is going to go on to be a singles star now, so it seems anyway.
He already was, but
but you could have, the rest of the Wyatt family against the Ascension.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, Adrian Neville is one guy to keep an eye on.
Yep.
A couple of current wrestlers that I think are part of the future of the business. Cesaro, obviously, which we alluded to earlier. All 3 members of the Shield, which we talked about in previous episodes of the podcast.
Yeah, you're going to see a couple of those guys hit main event, and then one or two of them are going to hit mid-card.
Over the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to see multiple title reigns out of the Shield.
Yeah.
And you might not like this one, and a lot of listeners might not like this one. I think honestly, Cena is still part of the future of the business. Yeah. He's only 37. I was looking online. Hogan's first world title reign in the WWF was when he was 30.
Yeah.
He wrestled for McMahon for about 10 years till he was in his 40s. Then went to WCW.
Ric Flair's the same way, too.
Wrestled a few years there, then reinvented his character and wrestled well into his 50s. If Cena could stay healthy, I don't think he needs to with the money he has.
No.
I think he loves the business too much. He's very possibly a big part of the future of the next 10 years of wrestling.
He's going to be he probably already is, actually, this generation's Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, I definitely will agree with that.
Don't get me wrong, I like Cena as a human being. His persona is old, but I like what he does. I still like his promos, which is saying something because he's been around for so dang long. He can still cut a hell of a promo. But, yeah, he's going to be around for a very long time.
Right.
That's all there is to it. Hopefully he doesn't have 25 title runs. I mean, he's already at 15.
Yeah.
And he's looking for a 16th?
Well, I'll get to my Money in the Bank predictions, like I said, next week.
Yeah, we'll do that next week.
But get ready for the 16th. A couple people before we go into our last segment of the show. As far as, I'll throw in a couple divas in there too. But one other guy on NXT, Sami Zayn.
Oh, Sami Zayn.
There seems to be some possibility that he might get the push as well.
Yeah, I would expect Kevin Steen to come in, and hopefully, speaking of Kevin Steen, he keeps his name.
Yeah.
I don't want him to be repackaged. Sami Zayn, it made sense because he was El Generico. He's not the generic luchador anymore.
He has no mask.
He has no mask whatsoever, so it made sense for them to do that.
Right.
But those two have feuded so much in ROH, and I think they had a lot of matches in PWG out in California.
Pro Wrestling Guerrilla.
Yep. I think they had Feud of the Year in 2010. I think that was
Pro
Wrestling Insider
I definitely think
gave them that.
There's already talk that those two are going to feud upon Steen's arrival in NXT.
So yeah, the only thing that I'm going to miss about Kevin Steen, and I did mention this on a few forums, is that he's not going to be able to do his package pile driver anymore, which technically he's strong enough to hold them up so they don't even hit their heads with that move. It's going to be interesting how they're going to make him use a more WWE moveset, and hopefully he has a kind of a dominant finisher too, so that'd be really nice.
2 more names I have on my list before we get into our reader comments portion of the show. Paige, possibly. I don't think, in my opinion, she has the look. She is, has the Sheamus kind of body.
I think she's kind of young.
The pale.
You know what I mean?
And I agree. I think she is someone that would be better served with her talents in TNA.
I can see that with that division.
She'd be a star there. I honestly think, and there has been reports that Kevin Dunn and Vince McMahon aren't very high on Paige.
No.
and they really haven't done anything with her since she's won the Divas title.
No, I don't think they. I don't know if they don't like the look or they don't have her talk. And even when she does talk, mind you, she's 21. She's been wrestling since
She's
12.
like 12.
So she's been in the business a long time. She's been traveling in the business a long time. But her promos, I don't think she's used to dealing with, 15, 20,000 people in a crowd and then realizing, oh crap, I have millions of people watching.
I think maybe they brought her up just a bit too early.
Yeah, but she had nothing to do on NXT. She's great on NXT. She was good on NXT, dealing with everything in that little capacity crowd,
right?
Which is basically an indie show. You take that, you take the big fish, and you put it into the ocean. She's not swimming very well,
right? The last wrestler I have on my list, Charlotte Flair, or just Charlotte, so to speak.
I like Charlotte Flair a lot.
I think her and Natalya had a hell of a match here on the, what was it, NXT TakeOver?
Yep.
I think it was a couple...
she can talk.
About 3 weeks ago, I think that was 3 weeks, a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
She could talk. Obviously, she's a Flair.
Mm-hmm.
She's beautiful. Hell of a wrestler. I think that, like I said, the Divas division sucks.
Well, imagine her coming up, and Ric Flair is supposed to be coming back working on the road. Imagine him managing her.
I could see it, but,
talk about a boost to the Divas division.
Who's she going to wrestle? There's no one there. Alicia Fox is,
See, that's the problem. You have people like Emma, who has been working in Shimmer,
and
which
they make her
female wrestling promotion.
A joke character.
Yeah. And I mean, you got to have the people that that can wrestle and that can cut a promo wrestle.
Right.
Bailey is another one that's in NXT. She's really, really good too. And maybe they just need to kick out half of the divas that are taking up space.
Sasha Banks seems to be one.
Sasha Banks is really good as well.
Coming as well.
Kick half the people out, or if you're gonna do it, divide it into the total diva sect of people,
right? And
then the actual people on television.
Yeah, I mean, I do like the look. I do like the skill set. I think she has a chance to make it. It just, I guess, depends on what creative comes up with her.
Yeah, exactly. Last one that I want to mention, and there's been rumors about this floating around, Kenta.
Right.
I mentioned earlier in the podcast here. Kenta actually speaks Japanese and English very, very well.
There was talk that he has signed with WWE.
He had a great workout with them, and that was one of his bucket list things that he wanted to do, was come over and work out with Triple H and get everything going there. Multiple time GHC Junior Champion. I think he's only held the GHC Heavyweight title once, and that was almost a year-long reign. That is a major, major Japanese promotion, Pro Wrestling Noah. And
to, like you said, he does speak fluent English.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't going to be that language barrier like
no.
Who do I want to say? A Sin Cara.
No.
Where it only seems that they had him against Rey Mysterio, or with Rey Mysterio, or against Alberto Del Rio.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to pigeonhole him into a corner.
No.
Type thing. And I think that adds a little bit of international flavor too, but because he can speak that fluent English, I think that is really going to benefit him in the E, and I think he is really going to move up the ladder. Like a Cesaro. Cesaro, obviously.
Yeah.
He speaks fluent English, and look what that's doing for his career.
I think they should take a book out of TNA, which we shouldn't say that often, but they should take a book out of TNA.
We're really referencing TNA a lot tonight.
I know, it's bad, but and give him, if they bring Kenta up, give him those, strict Japanese training promos and those nice video packages that TNA is doing for Muta. So that's another guy that's on the radar, and hopefully that'll bring some other guys in Japan. A Tanahashi or anybody that's been doing a lot of work. A couple other guys, from Inoki's New Japan. A lot of those guys would be really good workers over here. I know that ROH is working with Bullet Club, which is the big faction for New Japan right now, which has AJ Styles as the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion.
Right.
and then a couple other guys that are in that as well that are really, really good.
Right.
So it'd be interesting to see, some of those guys come over to the roster for WWE, but I don't know if there's going to be enough space for that, and they'll work in those type of matches.
We'll see what happens. I mean, there's, I think Jeff Jarrett put it best. The independent talent pool is
huge.
Is large. It's huge. So that kind of ends our discussion on what we feel is the future for WWE, Ring of Honor, TNA, and Global Force Wrestling. Some of the wrestlers that we think are going to be the future. Let us know what you guys think. We are on iTunes now. You can do the search in the iTunes store for the Count Out Podcast. You can check us out on YouTube. You can also give us a tweet at Count Out Podcast. You can also check us out on Facebook. Just do a search for the Count Out Podcast, and we will come up in the search results. Mm-hmm. So that brings us then to a YouTube comment that we got this week from TAppin2005. If I'm butchering that YouTube name, I'm sorry, but
it's
once again, it's one that's all one word. I can't read, sentences in one word. So his question is, do you think Roman Reigns will wrestle Triple H or Orton at SummerSlam? They have kind of teased that Roman Reigns is going to be going after Triple H. Would I see Reigns wrestling Triple H at SummerSlam? I think it's a distinct possibility. Depending on what happens at Elimination Chamber. I would say if Reigns walks out as a world champion, I definitely see it. I could also see Triple H or some members of the Authority screwing Roman Reigns, out of a chance to win the title at Elimination Chamber.
I'm gonna go back to the promo that they cut 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Dean Ambrose specifically targeted Rollins.
Right.
On that.
And Reigns
specifically targeted Orton and Triple H.
Right.
So, I'm going to say Orton is going to be the main guy that they're going to be having Reigns be feuding with.
Right.
Just for that fact. And we'll get kind of more into that, next week when we talk about our Money in the Bank.
Yeah, and I think Triple H, as far as the main roster is concerned, he's going to be there for big pay-per-views, and he's obviously still part of the storyline.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we see him wrestle until Daniel Bryan comes back.
I don't think he needs to wrestle, to be honest.
No, I don't think he needs to either. He's already one of the biggest heels in the company. Him and Stephanie are both the two biggest heels in the company right now. He doesn't have to wrestle. He stays relevant enough, cutting one promo a week on TV. I could see Orton walking out of Money in the Bank with the world title and then him feuding with Reigns at SummerSlam.
Yep.
So I could definitely see him wrestling either one of them. I would say lean, like you said, more likely towards Reigns wrestling Orton.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say probably Triple H will probably fight Daniel Bryan at SummerSlam. I know...
That's if Bryan comes back by that time. We're still unclear of his...
That's if Bryan comes back. Like I said,
timeline.
there is talk that he will be back this weekend, and then his neck injury is legit, but the way they've been playing it off since he's been back, that it's storyline and he'll wrestle at Money in the Bank, I don't think so. I think it will set up a feud, though, when he does come back at SummerSlam, if he comes back healthy. So, I guess, to basically answer your question, I guess we both kind of agree Reigns will most likely wrestle Orton at SummerSlam. And then, we'll see what happens with Triple H. But I would say it's a definite possibility. Reigns will wrestle Orton.
Yeah, to kind of roll off of that, too, I think we're probably going to end up seeing Rollins and Ambrose at SummerSlam.
Oh, definitely. I think
that's going to be the blowout
I
match.
think SummerSlam is, we're getting a bit ahead and skipping a pay-per-view here. But I think SummerSlam is going to be an amazing pay-per-view.
We're probably going to end up seeing Brock Lesnar again.
Possibly.
Because I think he's signed for that pay-per-view, for that major pay-per-view anyway.
If you look at it, what they just got possibly in the pipeline, Lesnar against possibly Cesaro or Bryan, Triple H against possibly Bryan, Rollins and Ambrose, Reigns and Orton, whatever Cena's going to do, the Wyatts. I think it could shape up to be one of the better SummerSlams in a long time.
I'm going to be a slight mark right here. And say what everybody wants to say. CM Punk coming back for SummerSlam, maybe. And then going against Triple H, maybe.
And I think maybe...
I think that'd be a great storyline.
I think what, maybe in a future podcast, maybe we should talk a little bit on CM Punk. I guess we've kind of alluded a little bit to what I guess our feelings are on CM Punk.
Yeah.
But I think maybe that might not be a bad discussion point for the future.
Yeah.
Just kind of our thoughts on the whole CM Punk situation.
Yeah, we'll discuss that in a future podcast as part of our subjects that we have. So.
And you know what? I think I made a kind of an F up here. We actually have one other pay-per-view before SummerSlam. We have We have Battleground.
Battleground.
Is on the 20th of July in Tampa, Florida.
Bubba Love Sponge. Going to be on the radio talking about it in his only market.
Yes, Bubba Love Sponge. So anyways, folks, that ends episode 3 of the Count Out Podcast. Once again, we appreciate those that have listened to us, those that have chimed in with their comments. Go ahead and spread the word, share it with friends. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and listen to us on iTunes. Like I said, iTunes will be your first place to catch the latest episodes of the Count Out Podcast. And spread the word. We realize that this process of building the podcast is going to be a trying one. It is going to be. It's going to be slow. But like I had said in episode 1, we are in it for the long haul. We're not going anywhere anytime soon. We're going to be wrestling fans for a long time, if not forever. So this isn't a run-of-the-mill thing where podcast comes in, does a couple episodes, disappears for 6 months, and starts doing them again.
Yeah, and if we have any problems or something, we will allude to that in a prior podcast or something, if we have to leave for any kind of reason. So expect these every week on Friday.
Right, and if there's anything you guys like to see, different segments, go ahead and let us know. We have discussed the possibility of trying to get some people on the show due to the geographical region where we are in. It's going to be next to near impossible. We get 1 or 2 wrestling events every couple of years.
Yep.
I won't spoil anything. I'm trying to do the best that I can with what few connections that I have to get some people on the show. I can't promise anything, but otherwise you're just going to have to put up with Justin and I bantering for an hour and 15 minutes to 20 minutes every week.
Yeah.
So anyways, that ends episode 3 of the podcast. Thanks again, everybody, for listening, and we will see you next Friday with episode number 4.
Woohoo, 4.